Welcome back, children. Let us learn the nuances of writing a story. So, this video basically includes the elements that have to be kept in mind when we write a story. There are two genres of story. One is fiction and the other is non-fiction. Fiction means a work of imagination, and non-fiction means something that is real. So, under fiction stories, we have fantasy, mystery, science, history, romantic, horror, and crime. And the difference between fiction and non-fiction story is fiction is, of course, not real, whereas non-fiction is real. Fiction is kind of a story talk, whereas non-fiction talks about facts, all facts. You cannot fiddle with the facts because the story is real. Then fiction, we read fiction to enjoy, and non-fiction we read to learn, like autobiographies, biographies written on, famous famous personalities belonging to different walks of life. So we get to learn a lot by reading non-fiction stories. Then fiction stories are very illustrative, whereas non-fiction stories includes photographs, charts, etc. Photos. Since the stories are real, the setup is real, the characters are real, so even the photographs got to be from their life. Then a fiction story may have a beginning, end, whereas a non-fiction is like table of contents, because whatever you're writing is real. It has to be factual. Then character setting, everything is imaginary. Here, character setting, everything is character, and setting everything is real. Then in fiction stories, most of the time we have a problem and a solution to it also, right? Because it's a work of imagination. After all, the person who's writing a fiction story must have thought of a beginning and an end also. But here, the information is true, and all stories, non-fiction stories, may not have a solution to the problem. An example of a fiction story is like science fiction stories 1949. As I told you earlier, children, non-fiction stories are real. They are based on facts because they talk about real characters, the plot is real, the setting is real, everything in a non-fiction story is real. So non-fiction stories also come under different categories like history, memoirs, letters, biography, autobiographies, journals, even essays on art or literature are part of or a kind of non-fiction story. Then scientific, technical, or economic writings also fall under this category, and dictionary too. So, like my autobiography by Mary Wells is a non-fiction story. Then a book written on Einstein also belongs to this genre. Now we learn about elements of story writing. What is the meaning of elements? Elements are the pieces that make up a story. When you join those pieces in the correct order, then it results into a story. It comes together to create a story as a whole. So elements, all the elements put together create a story. So to begin with, the first element is, of course, every story has to have a name or a title. Then every story has a setting. Each story has characterization, wherein you have to talk about characters. In a fiction story, you have to think of characters, and it is a job of the writer to create characters and create their special features also. Then there is a plot. Then all kinds of stories, whichever genre they belong to, there can be a conflict or a problem. Then there is a climax, after which resolution means reaching to a solution, the conflict, finding out a solution to a problem or a conflict. And of course, every story has a theme. The first element is setting, which is an integral part of any kind of story, fiction or non-fiction. And setting tells the reader where means a place, and when means the time the story takes place, whether the story took place in the past or if it's a work of fiction, it can be future also. The second element is characterization. Now, characterization means creation of imaginary people who appear to be real to the reader. This is applicable for a fictional story. Then the writer gives information about the characters in the story, what kind of a character is. And also, children, here I would like to mention illustrations also help a lot. Now, if you look at this picture, there is a lot that you can understand about the character, what kind of a character this must be. The next element is plot, and plot is a series of events through which the writer reveals what is happening to whom and why. And it is very important for the writer to keep these events in the correct order. The chronological order of events should be maintained, otherwise, the readers will end up confused. Now, if you see this, the plot of the story should be like exposition. Exposition means a comprehensive description and explanation of an idea or theory. So just the beginning of the story should give the reader an idea about the plot or what kind of story is it going to be to maintain the reader's interest. Otherwise, the readers will never go ahead to read your story. Then exposition gradually, then the writer takes the readers through a rising action and takes the readers to a climax. Climax is the most important event of any story. Once the climax has been reached, then the falling action, then the reader is taken towards resolution. Resolution means the solution to the problem. The writer takes the readers to the problem of the to the solution of the problem which was there at the time of climax. Okay, now the next element is conflict. Conflict is a problem in the story that needs to be resolved. So conflict actually makes the story writing very, very interesting. Now conflict can be between protagonist against nature, another individual, society, God himself or herself. Who is a protagonist? Protagonist is the main character of the story. Now, in a story, the highest point of action when it is reached is considered, highest point of conflict, I would say, is considered as climax. And in the previous slide also, we had seen that after exposition, the readers are taken to the climax. After the climax, then the readers are brought to a resolution. So resolution is what is the story's action after the climax, and resolution forms the end of the story, means the conclusion of the story forms resolution of any story. Point of view is another element, the position of the narrator of the story and what the writer sees from that vantage point is point of view. What is the point of view of the narrator or the writer? That is also very, very important. It is very important to understand the writer's point of view. And the writer should be able to put it across very clearly to the reader. Otherwise, the readers will lose interest in the story. Then is the theme, the story's main ideas, the message to the readers is communicated by the theme, or it is in fact called as the theme of the story. So I would say even before starting a story, this is the most important element which should be decided by any writer. Theme. What is the theme going to be of your story? So if anyone wishes to grow up to be a writer, then you should be able to use elements of the short story with such a precision that the reader is caught up in the action of the story. This is a mark of a good story and a goal as a writer. So a person, anyone who decides to write a story and is able to do justice with all the elements that we've discussed in the video, then the story definitely is going to turn out to be an interesting one and will be able to hold the reader's attention. Now guidelines of the story, actually story writing actually is the same, talking about the elements, keeping the elements into consideration, but still I would just like to go through these guidelines. Firstly, an interesting plot is necessary for a good story. Interesting plot and a theme also. Then the various important events must be related and generally follow a chronological order of sequence of events. Chronological order means the order of time. Sometimes a past happening or event may also be included which a character may think of or which is required as a reference based on the main plot. So sometimes something that had happened in the past has also a reference in present. Then the writer has the freedom to refer to that past event also. The character in the story must appear to be real. Sometimes they may be absolutely imaginary, like elves, fairies, aliens, and so on. But still, the writer's power of writing should be such that even elves and fairies, their description should be so vivid that these fictional characters also come to life. The writer may reveal the characters through a narrative or use another character to give a description. Sometimes, realistic incidents or behavior of the characters help unfold the story to the reader. Sometimes, the writers can also take the help of realistic incidents even while they are writing a fictional story. Then, the story should carry a message for the reader, which may be implied or be obvious at the end. Each story should have a message for the reader, a takeaway from the story. A story can be made interesting and gripping if there are some pieces or dialogues or conversations included at the right places. I would also say illustrations also. If your story includes illustrations, that also makes uh, the story interesting. So a good gripping plot, good gripping theme, and also some dialogues. If the story has pieces of dialogues, then it helps to hold the reader's interest. The story should end on an interesting note. The end should not be flat. It arouses the curiosity of the reader if there is a twist at the end of the tale. The events of the story should not end abruptly. Now, a twist at the end of the tale mostly does not happen in a work of non-fiction. This freedom is enjoyed by the writers who write fiction stories because it's all based on imagination. So you have the freedom to, you know, make your story take turns and twists as and when you feel like. In order to make the story appealing to the reader, various adjectives and phrases are used for description of people, places, and actions. That is why it is said that you should always expose yourself to different genre of stories. You should read stories belonging to different genres because each kind of genre has a different set of vocabulary words. The story should carry a message for the reader, which may be implied or be obvious at the end. Then a proverb or idiom may be used as the title of the story. The story should be written in the past tense. Most of the time, the story is written in the past tense. And every now and then, use of proverbs, idioms, and sayings makes your writing very, very effective. In which all cases can we write stories? So when pictures are given, a single frame of picture is given or more than one frame of picture is given, we can write a story. But when there is more than one frame of picture given, then we should ensure that there is a connection between all the frames. Then sometimes a title or a moral is given or both are given to write a story. So you have to ensure that your story justifies to the title or the moral given. It should match the title and the moral. Then the third is when a guided outline is provided. There are vocabulary words given in the correct event, in the correct sequence. Then you can, with your inputs, you can frame a story using those guidelines. Make sure, children, you just do not add these guided outlines given with the conjunctions and frame a story. There has to be your personal input while writing a story. The points will help to form a story, and they should actually be a guideline for you to write a story. It should not be the story itself. Then the last is sometimes the beginning or the end of the story is given. A beginning line is given and you are supposed to continue, or your story should end with the given line as the end of the story. Now, this is a very interesting activity, children, storyboard. So, if you make this storyboard, 50% of the job is done when you decide to write a story. Storyboard helps you to plan a story without writing it all out. Now, another advantage of storyboard is that once your storyboard is ready, you can sit down to write any time. And if the storyboard is not ready, then you'll have to read the story right from the beginning and then you will be able to continue. So that's going to waste a lot of time. And once the storyboard is written, like you have all the details, how you're going to open, the setting of the story is already jotted down, characters, number of characters, and their features, the problem, and how the problem is solved, the ending also. Once it is decided on the storyboard, you can pick up the story at any point in time and you can continue, because there are writers who take months together to pen down a single story. So I would I would advise all of you to even in exams, just try this out. Not in exams, at least as practice you must prepare a storyboard and then write a story. This is story Monkey and the Veg, based on these two picture frames. This is the first one and this is the second one. Please do go through it. Children, this is all about story writing. There will be an assignment sent to you to write a story based on picture frames. And also I'll be sending a reference video also along with it. Thank you.